You are listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, I had the opportunity to interview Andrea Putting. Andrea has written 3 books as a solo author: Compassionate Prosperity, Compassionate Purpose, and Moment of Infinity. Additionally, she co-wrote Awaken Stealth Leadership with Dr. Som Saini and was one of 21 authors of the collaborative book I Am Possible. Andrea is also a bespoke publisher. I'm here with Andrea Putting. That's spelled Putting is how her last name is spelled. Who is the author of multiple books and is a bespoke publisher. Andrea, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay. So I am an author, a speaker, and a publisher. So my journey has taken me from discovering chocolate and coffee day for religious harmony into creating a podcast, Social Mission Revolution, which led to me writing 2 books on that topic: Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment, and Compassionate Prosperity, When Success is Not Enough. And from that, I started my own publishing journey of publishing my own books, and that led me to become a publisher.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I live in Australia, obviously, from my accent. So what else would you like to know, Aaron?
Without spoiling too much of your books, Compassionate Prosperity and Compassionate Purpose, what are those 2 books about?
Yes, Compassionate Purpose and Compassionate Prosperity are based on social mission. So like I said, I had a podcast, which was Social Mission Revolution. And on that, I spoke to people who are involved in social missions. So businesses that were involved in doing something beyond just business. So they were involved with charity work. They'd set up their business so that it would support community endeavors, things like that. And also individuals who had started their own social missions, their foundations, or had somehow become involved with something that was significant along those lines into volunteering. And so that's what my books are about. They're about why it's important for business. With Compassionate Prosperity is for business. So that one's about why it's important for businesses to get involved in social mission, and it gives lots of ideas from the podcast of different people who have been involved, and then gives a bit of the how-to. And so then Compassionate Purpose, it does that for individuals, why it's important to us as individuals, how it brings us a life of fulfillment and joy. And once again, ideas of how people have got involved just to spark your creative thinking, and a guideline on how to find that perfect volunteering gig that fits you like a glove.
You've also written a devotion anthology book called Moment of Infinity. Without spoiling too much of it, what is it about?
That started during lockdown, and I just started to write some spiritual little muses every day. And at the end of the year, I put them together into a book. So it's my spiritual writings, my spiritual musings. It's full of stories. I call psalms, so just little devotional pieces, and just things along those lines. I've actually have 2 more sitting on my computer waiting to be published that I just have never got around to. I just haven't got around to doing those yet. So that will happen. Hopefully next year I'll get those published as well.
You co-wrote Awaken Stealth Leadership with, correct me if I'm pronouncing this individual's name wrong, Dr. Som Saini?
Som Saini, yes. So I wrote that, I think it's about 6 years ago now. And Som and I were working on how to improve employee engagement. And we thought that the place where that started was with leadership. And so we put together this book on how leaders can engage in their communities, how they can become, first of all, it went through the process of yourself, of your own leadership, of guiding yourself into a place where you are ready to be a leader. And then some of the things you need to do to help engage your community and have them working with you, not against you, or have you working alongside of them rather than from a position of power. Empowering your community really is what it's about.
The last book of yours I want to mention, you were one of 21 authors who collaborated to write I Am Possible. That's the letter I, the letter M, possible. What is that book about?
Well, that book's got a lot of different stories in it about how people have found ways of empowering themselves, really. Their stories, their life stories of what they've done to feel that whatever they're doing, it's possible for them to achieve and overcome whatever happens in their lives. So in that book, I wrote about my journey of feeling low and depressed in my own life to becoming the founder of Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony, and that story that weaved into that of how that empowered me to take on more things in my life, to be able to stand up in the community and to make a difference.
You've described yourself as a bespoke publisher. What is a bespoke publisher, and do you run your own publishing company?
Yes, I do run my own publishing company, and why I call it a bespoke publishing is that what I do is create the experience of the book in the way that fits the author and their message. So what it's kind of halfway. It's the in between. So it's working with the self-publishing area, but guiding the author through that experience. And we take care of the things like the book cover and the formatting and getting the book to be bestseller and all those kind of things in between that when you go into publishing your own books, you have no idea what all those little things you need to do. But when I talk about bespoke, it's because of the individualization of the book. The experience of it is one that fits the particular author, because every author is different and what they want is different. And so what I've found is as we go through the journey and we format their book becomes a piece of art inside and out. And it really speaks to that person's message. So you don't just pick up a book and it's just word after word after word. It has a feeling, it comes alive. And I often say it's like if you walk into someone's house. Now, if it's not your home and you haven't designed it, it's not going to feel like you. But if you walk into your home, you've put everything where you want it to be. It looks and feels like you. That's what we do with the book. We have it look and feel like the author so that when people read it, they're not just reading the words, they're experiencing who the author is.
I'm going to pivot back to the books you've written for the next couple of questions. Are all your books self-published, all of them traditionally published, or some self-published and others traditionally published?
Okay, so the self-publishing journey, when I did Compassionate Purpose, Compassionate Prosperity, and Moments of Infinity, I had them all at the same time. They were all ready to go. And of course, publishing 3 books at one time is quite an effort. So I could not afford to have somebody else publish it for me. So I needed to go down the journey of self-publishing. So what I did instead is I invested in having other people, having experts teach me how to publish. So that's where I came into the publishing. And then once I had done that, people were looking at my books and said, "Hey, can you help me publish my book?" And so that's where that whole journey came. Awaken Self-Leadership, it was published by a publisher in India because my co-author was from India and he was living in Australia and went back to India at that time. And so he had the book published in India. So that was kind of a in-between model as well. They didn't do a lot of the promotion and things. So it wasn't quite being published and not quite self-published. It was still in that in-between area.
Yeah, Awaken Self Leadership, I would consider that to be a book published by a hybrid press, something in between self publishing, but not traditional publishing in the proper sense.
Yeah.
Now, are your books only available in Australia, or some or some or all of them available to purchase in other countries as well?
My books can be purchased pretty much on any internet book selling website. They're available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Kobo. I've looked it up on the internet and found that it's available in some countries that I would never thought my book would be available. And there it is, written in a foreign language, but it's still my book. So just hop onto your favorite internet bookseller and you can find my books.
You are a public speaker, and when you do public speaking, what topics do you give speeches about?
There's a couple of topics that I focus on. Of course, the ones from my book, Compassionate Purpose and Compassionate Prosperity. So I talk a lot about people getting involved in social mission and encouraging that, and encouraging people to become volunteers and to be looking at that on how they can make the most out of that. And the other topic that I talk about is Chocolate and Coffee Day, which is started with Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony, which is December the 15th. And the idea of that is I encourage people to reach out to someone who is different to them, to share in those simple pleasures of life, chocolate, coffee, and conversation. Because when we do, we break down the barriers that divide us. So if we're to sit down with somebody who comes from a different religion, a different culture, a different set of abilities, a different viewpoints politically, whatever it is, when we sit down with them and listen to their stories, listen to who they are with an open mind, an open heart, then those barriers that divide community start to melt away. And that's something that research does prove that just by listening to somebody for 1 hour, that the differences between that person and us melts away, but not just to that person, but to their whole social group. So it's really a good opportunity for people to start learning about each other, and a great way for some of those differences in the community that are causing problems now. If we can listen to each other, then maybe we can start to break down some of those barriers. So They're two of my favorite subjects, and I can talk ad nauseum about them.
What is a publishing confidant, and why do you recommend that authors have one?
So, a publishing confidant would be someone like myself who can work with you as you go through the journey, who can share the journey with you, who can give you the guidance you need to build your community and to get your community aware that your book is coming out and that you are building up that anticipation with that, and just guiding you through that journey of the publishing journey so that you're not alone. You've got someone you can come back to, someone that you can go through things and have those conversations when things arise, that somebody else is going to be there with you along that journey the whole time. So you can talk to your best friend about it, but if they're not involved, if they're not an author, if they're not a publisher, they've got little idea of what you're going through or what's needed. So it helps to have someone by your side who will walk with you.
One final question I have, and I didn't actually have this written down. What part of Australia do you live in, and what do you enjoy most about living in Australia?
Well, I live in Melbourne in Australia, and that's on the very southern part of the East Coast. I like living in Melbourne because some people hate Melbourne weather because it's up all over the place, but I do like the environment here in Melbourne. I love living here. Well, it's my home. I've always lived in Australia. I do have other countries that I can relate to and connect with. But I think we're a little bit laid back compared to other countries. We don't take ourselves too seriously. I like the physical environment, the smell of the eucalyptus trees. I love the animals. I love the birds. The wildlife is just beautiful. And I guess I just call it home. And, I've got my family and I've got a lifestyle that fulfills me.
Andrea, you were a wonderful guest, and I thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author podcast.
Thank you, Aaron. It's been a real pleasure.
I had never heard the term bespoke publisher until I interviewed Andrea, and I thank Andrea for describing what a bespoke publisher is. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. To those who celebrate, have a safe and happy holiday season. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/authoraac. You can follow me on Facebook at AuthorAAC and on Instagram at AACScribe. Copyright 2023, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.